Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be unto you. Welcome to Citizen Live. My name is Haroon Khan, and this is a series of conversations with professionals, with citizens, with people like you, and people that are directly affected by some of the worst things that could ever really happen to humanity, that we're all going through collectively as human beings. And that's what's going on in Gaza and Palestine. Now, it didn't occur in a vacuum. October 7th, it happened. There was a terrible attack on Israel, and but in essence, that attack was also a jailbreak. For over 75 years, the Palestinian people have been denied their statehood, their rights, their dignity. You can opine as to how you feel about one thing or another, but truly, this is something that has shaken up the world, and it continues to do so. And we, as citizens, as people, as members of the human family, we have a role to play. And part of that is talking about things, having difficult conversations, and also uplift. There's a transformative power to make change, and that's resilience, that's determination, that's tenacity. But the transformative power of love will really set us free. I'm very honored and pleased to introduce our guest today. Mrs. Arwa Shurab is a passionate Palestinian leadership consultant and coach. She's the founder of HERVOICE, an NGO focused on empowering women to have equal opportunities, leadership, and representation. And she's a very, very fierce advocate for her community, the Palestinian community, to give them the opportunities, to give them the voice that is very much needed, especially now. Mr. Adam Soliman. Now, who's the better half here?
She is, of course.
There you go. Good answer. Good answer. So Adam Soliman is a lawyer. I've known Adam actually a while, Adam. How long have we known each other now?
More than 12 years.
12 years. Look at that. Like, time is liquid. It's just so, it's unbelievable sometimes. It really makes you wonder. But he's always been a very gracious friend. And the best of friends always pick up where they leave off. Like sometimes we've had gaps where we haven't met, but whenever we get together, it's like, here we are again. So it's always a pleasure to meet you. Adam's a very distinguished lawyer, practices in Vancouver. And he's the founder of the BC Muslim and Arab Professionals, an organization aimed at representing the common cause and interest of Arab and Muslims, progressional in BC. He teaches and lectures at seven universities, including the University of Hong Kong, Dalian Maritime University in China, the University of Calgary. He's also taught at the University of British Columbia, where he's now a PhD candidate. So you're very well qualified. So there we go. So welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
And let's get straight into it. So we're all dealing with the ongoing aftermath of October 7th, but that stretches back 75 years, and that's the context that a lot of people just simply don't understand. And so Arwa, as a Palestinian woman, as a mother, as someone wearing the keffiyeh with pride, what is your take on all of this?
First, I want to thank you for having us, Haroon. This is really important to speak about issues like that. Even though we have entered day 204, I still think that there's room for more discussion. There is room for, it's a learning curve for all of us. And I think even the average person still needs to understand certain things. Some things have come to light in the aftermath of October 7th, which we are thankful for, because even in every hardship, there is light. And I do see this as the light. I see normal people that never really cared, that called this a conflict, that called it complicated, are now woke, and they understand that this is repression, and it's been going on for decades. So when we talk about October 7th, I completely understand that there was an attack. and I acknowledge that. However, I have to talk. I can't talk about one piece of the puzzle.
No.
So if we are piecing that piece in the large puzzle, then we have to talk about the history of Gaza.
Yes.
How did the Palestinians end up in Gaza? Well, most of them, 90% of the Palestinians that are living in Gaza are refugees.
It's a refugee camp.
Exactly.
That's the reality.
Exactly. They were pushed out of the West Bank in the aftermath of 1948 and all the Nakba and all the pushing of Palestinians from their villages. So they were pushed to the border, they were sent to Gaza. And then, as we know, in 2005, Israel decided to withdraw from Gaza. And from that moment, it became an open-air prison.
It's an open-air prison, but it's also the largest open-air prison in the world is what it's known as. But now it's the largest open-air grave.
Exactly. So when we talk about October 7, we can't talk about it in isolation. We can't talk about it we can't talk just about what Hamas did, and we can't say that it was a horrific terrorist attack. We have to talk about it in the context of what Gazans have been going through for 75 years and Palestinians as a whole. I mean, we hear about horrific things happening in the West Bank. There's no Hamas there. So we need to be, I think now, and a lot of people are, and I have had so many conversations, and I'm so happy that people now truly understand the underlying impact of the occupation, the underlying impact of what's happening in Palestine.
Yes, no, absolutely. It's a difficult thing to talk about because we look at the horror of it, 34,000 plus, who knows how many are left buried, unrecovered bodies. You've got so many injured, maimed. Starvation is being used as a weapon of war. And it's a very real thing. It's very visceral.
Yeah.
And it really hits to the heart of it.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, it's gone like we're close to 7 months now.
Yeah.
So 7 months. So 204 days at the time of this recording. And there's no real end in sight yet. And I appreciate what you said earlier. There is hope.
Yeah.
There is hope. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing a galvanizing of public opinion. And I would really love to salute the students all over the world at campuses, particularly now in the U.S. It's reminiscent of the 1968 uprisings in during the Vietnam War when the peace activism really flourished. And so people are coming together, and a number of them are Jewish, right? So there are a lot of Jewish students, a lot of independent Jewish voices who are saying, "Not in my name," and that's very heartening because they see the reality of it. I don't conflate criticism, condemnation of the state of Israel for the genocide that they are perpetrating.
Yeah,
that is a fact.
Yeah.
If this is not a genocide, what is?
Exactly.
Right. And so this is really what it is. So Adam, as a lawyer, and the definition of genocide, it's come up. And is it not? Is it a plausible genocide? They were given a very clear determination by the International Criminal Court to alleviate the conditions that would lead to more destruction, more death. There's been nothing but more destruction and more death each and every day as this has gone on, and yet our governments are silent, right? And they're not. Their actions do not have a lot of teeth. So it's a bit of a two-pronged question, in terms of what genocide is and what can governments do to really push this forward.
Well, definitions in legal terms is a fascinating area. A term can have many different definitions. The one you're particularly interested in is the definition that is used in the International Court of Justice. But genocide could mean a different thing in Canada, under our criminal code, or in any other legal place. The general meaning of the word, that's where we all start from. But by the time it makes its way into legislation or into a piece of law, it changes. And it's not only the definition that really matters in legal terms, it's sometimes how it's applied. And that's what a lot of people don't see. And that's usually the practice that we have in the common law world, Canada, the States, and the UK, and Australia, New Zealand, similar countries, is we have a lot of focus on case law that defines what a word means. So you can have an act that says this is the meaning of the word, but you have to still go back to other examples to come to a complete understanding. And essentially, it is the court's role to find whether that term or the definition has been applied or not. The general meaning of the word genocide is a killing of a group of people for ethnic or political reasons. Now, for what's happening in Gaza, I don't think it needs a legal scholar to tell us whether genocide has happened or not. Genocide happened, and it's happening every day now, in front of the world. I don't think Israel cares. It is an aggressive state conducting terrorist activities on the Gazans. Whether they're told or not, doesn't matter. They're pushing their agenda. And I think we need to understand the policy and the history behind that to come to understand where this action is coming from. The ethnic cleansing of Palestinians started before 1948, not after, and not during. It was before. It was planned by the leaders of Israel. These individuals, some of them were actually labeled as terrorists by the British.
The Stern Gang.
Right? Their army is a grouping of terrorist organizations. And you can't avoid that history. The ethnic cleansing was planned before 1948. It was to remove the Palestinians from Palestine, to have a state for Jews, predominantly Jews, and to decrease the number of Palestinians down to 10%. Now, you can't ignore that history. And Gaza was excluded from that. That's where people would be going to. But then after 1968, when the Israeli government and planners realized there could be more pushing, that's when eyes went on Gaza. So I really don't think that the reaction of the Israeli government on Gaza today is just a pure reaction to October 7th. I think it was premeditated for decades.
It is. It's very clear. And so you look at the international rules-based order of law, and law should apply equally to all people. It's not applying to Israel. And this is where people are just so disappointed in their governments. They're so disappointed in the United Nations. They're so like, what's happening? So this is where how can governments come together to really take a stand? I've really been a big proponent of intervention. Like we've lived through so many genocides. So Bosnia and Herzegovina, Rwanda, the Uyghur people, there have been a number of them, and it's been very difficult to face. But those numbers, where it was legally defined as a genocide, 10,000, 15,000, 5,000, it's genocide. And here we've got so many people killed, continuing to be killed. Yet the government of Israel hides behind the fact, oh, it's Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Everything is Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. But the reality is this is a war on children. This is a war on families. This is, of the people being killed, it's predominantly civilian. You've got 70% of them are women and children. And it's unfathomable, it's unconscionable, it's immoral, it's wrong. And we know all of this. And a lot of the world is waking up to the fact, and they have woken up for a long time, but they haven't felt the real push to declare it publicly. And now people are, because you can be accused of being anti-Semitic for espousing these views. We could it could be characterized that this conversation is anti-Semitic, but it isn't, because as I had said earlier, having this criticism and condemnation of Israel is not anti-Semitism. It is, and ultimately, if you're a friend of any person, of any group, and we are friends of Jewish people, we are friends of Christian people, Buddhist, Sikh, whatever it may be. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all part of the human family. But if someone is doing wrong, you're obligated to let them know, hey, look, this is not acceptable. This is wrong. And this is where we as people need to intervene. So there are boycotts, the BDS movement, the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, and a lot of us have, foregone McDonald's or foregone Starbucks or, Howard Schultz, all of those things are there, but they have a real effect that we're taking our money elsewhere. We do, even in terms of consumption of certain items, we're pushing it away.
Yeah.
And we're supporting our local businesses. We're supporting our independent people in any number of industries. So that, I think, is having an impact, an economic impact. And for us to really move forward, what concrete steps would you like to let people know that they can do to improve the situation?
Well, I think every one of us has a role to play, and whether you're a professional, you can utilize your career path, your profession in advocating for the cause within your professional network, within your field.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, what happened after October 7th is a wave of fear. People got scared from talking and from exploring their thoughts on social media.
Yes.
And that, to me, was one of the first things we can work on, is to be able to speak out and explain to our colleagues, to our friends, our peers, the history of Palestine.
Yes.
But we were faced with a lot of fear from ramifications of doing so. And still work needs to happen in that area. The getting involved is another key thing. Getting involved, not in protests, getting involved with students,
Yes.
getting involved with other organizations. Just like you said, this is not an Arab or a Muslim problem. This is a global, ethical, and moral problem.
It's a human problem.
It's
Yes.
a human problem. And that's why, if you look at the protests now, the majority of the attendees of those protests are non-Arab and non-Muslims.
It's true.
This cause united indigenous peoples. It united people from different groups that have suffered from similar oppression.
The settler colonial
mentality that caused this problem from the beginning.
That's right.
So that's why you see the Sikh community getting involved, indigenous communities getting involved, people from different walks of life that are united around the cause.
It is a solidarity movement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is one thing.
And I think that the crux of the issue comes down to a morality problem. When you mentioned earlier that I don't know, you said, I don't know why our governments are not doing something or not telling Israel that what they're doing is wrong. I think the problem is a moral problem and a knowledge problem. Whether it's defined as genocide or not, end of the day, what you see in front of you happening, it invokes your morality, right? And that's why the solidarity is so, you have to look really at solidarity, look at the amount of Jewish people involved in this movement.
Yeah.
The main events you hear about in the States, like the Union Station closing down, these are events done by Jewish people supporting Palestine, saying not in our names. Why is that support? Are they against the state of Israel? They are looking at it as a moral problem.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, if you dig deeper, you have to actually understand that there are people in Israel, Israelis, that are against what the government is doing.
Well, Zionism is not Judaism.
Exactly.
It's a nationalist movement, and it's metastasized.
So that's when you really have to think deeper, right? And not have to you have to start getting away from labeling. Right? This is a human issue, just like you said. It's a moral issue. And our politicians need to understand that. It's not a matter of voting anymore. It's not a matter of voting power. It's a matter of what's right and what's wrong. And in this case, it is a very clear right and wrong situation. And that's what led a lot of Jews to support Palestinians in their cause, in the solidarity movement. So it's in essence, in my view, it's an ethical and moral problem. It's where we have to ask ourselves, each one of us, where do I stand on this? What's right and what's wrong? It has nothing to do with Islam. It has nothing to do with Judaism. It's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It is a very clear position. Do you agree on the killing of innocent people under some propaganda excuses or not?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's the ethical and moral issue of our time. And like there's an old Chinese proverb: "May you live in interesting times," and that's either a blessing or a curse. And I think we're all experiencing it. So as you said earlier, Arwa, with hardship comes ease.
Yeah.
And that's something that we really truly wish for everyone involved. Now, ultimately, there's the two-state solution, right? Where Palestinians and Israelis live side by side in peace, in security. Can we see that happen?
I don't know. I have to be honest, I don't know. The two-state solution is, at this point, I feel like it's an empty promise. I remember reading in the book, The 100 Years of War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. Basically, he was talking about what Palestinians have been going through for 100 years. And he was talking about all the wars that Gaza has gone through. Because, I mean, it's worth to mention that what's happening right now in Gaza, not only it happened many times before, but this is probably war number 10. There was a war in 2004, there was a war in 2007, there was a war in 2008 and 2009, there was a war in 2012, 2014, there was one in 2019, 2021, and then now. So when we talk about Gaza, we really have to study the history. And yes, in his book, he was talking about those wars, and he was talking specifically about what we as Palestinians have endured and how the 21st century has been terrible for us, especially within the Trump administration. He talked about how Trump administration gave away Jerusalem and the way Trump
and it's not his to give. This is the power.
Yeah. And he did, and he quoted Trump saying to Netanyahu, I gave you one thing now, and then maybe later, if negotiations ever happen, you'll have to give up something else. So for the president of the United States to say if negotiations will ever happen, it just indicates that it's a myth. The two-state solution has always been a myth. And not to mention that there is right now the Palestinian Authority. But what authority do they have? What authority does Mahmoud Abbas have? Nothing.
So there's a vacuum in leadership.
There's a vacuum in leadership. They want it that way, and they will always want it that way, because when you have a state that represents one religion only, how can you be inclusive? Right?
Exactly. And Palestine has Christian Palestinians, and they identify as Palestinians. Hannah Khawass, who I met in 1982. In the aftermath of the Sabra and Shatila massacres.
Yep.
And I've been marching, and I'm sure as you have, it's been decades. And I take my kids, and I'm getting to an age where I don't want to see my children, my grandchildren, having to protest. But protest we must, and also push for societal change. It's a pivotal moment in history, and we really can't be on the wrong side of it. So and there is an awakening. People are aware of it, and they do want to do what's necessary. So one of the things that I'd like to talk about is actualizing activism. This is where, what can you do right now? What can you do right now to improve the situation there? So and we talked about this earlier on, there are programs where you can sponsor an orphan. And there are so many orphans now. We'll have some links where people can go and donate to various programs to go and benefit the orphans, the yatim, as we call them. And then, of course, it's aid. Now, IDRF in Canada is a Canadian charity. They had a water truck there providing fresh water there.
That was bombed.
It got bombed. The hospitals getting bombed. The 400 bodies, all with their hands tied behind their back, shot execution style with signs of torture, including children.
Yeah.
These are things that we have to, you have to reveal it. You have to really expose it to the world, because a lot of people, they turn down the volume, they'll change the channel. But the reality is that this is happening. And so for a broad-based consensus to push forward and for things to do now, Arwa, what would you feel would be an important thing that people can do now to help this situation?
I would think that the first thing I would like to tell everyone that is, I always, when I approach people, when I speak to people, I say, if you're new to the cause,
yes,
because a lot of people are new to the cause.
Yeah.
And I want to stress that this is not a trend. Palestine is not a trend. Gaza is not a trend. Genocide has happened, and the aftermath of that will live on for decades.
Yes.
When we talk about injured, for example, so those are the lucky ones that did not get killed. The 75,000 that were lucky enough to not get killed, we're talking about life-altering injuries. We're not talking about scratches on the hand. We're talking about organs failure. We're talking about amputations. We're talking about burns all over the body, amidst where they don't have access to healthcare. So it is absolutely catastrophic in Gaza. There's no other way to look at it, and it is not a trend. So if you are new to the cause, or if you've been in the cause, what I would say is you can't stop. You can't stop, and it does not end by you changing the channel or turning away from social media or just saying, I don't want to hear about it. It doesn't stop. And we need to continue. This fight has to continue. Our fight for justice has to continue. And I do see hope. I mean, amidst everything that's happened, I still see hope. And I think that our voices are loud, and they have to get louder.
They do. And, there are days of advocacy. So there's a day of advocacy coming up here locally. And I think for a lot of folks out there, it doesn't matter where you live, whatever city, town, or country you're in, you have influence. You're a voter.
Yeah.
You're a citizen, and you have the capacity and capability of affecting change. Don't ever believe that you can't.
Absolutely.
You can.
Absolutely.
And this is where we seek to empower people, to give them a platform, to have someone to talk to, and to shed light on it. But also to, by uplifting and upholding the dignity of these people, you're really asserting your own. And this is an important part of being a human being, right? Like, we all have a responsibility. We all have to take care of someone. And when you take care of people, and if you save a life, as it says in the Quran and many, many holy books, it's as if you saved all of humanity. So one of the files that we've been working on is the IRCC SOS files of families that have ties to Canada. There are 1,000 applicants, all filled. Not one has made it over. There have been issues with Egypt, and Adam, I think if you could sort of touch on some of the issues of getting people across the border, and what the Canadian government can do to help facilitate this.
Well, for people to cross over from Gaza to Egypt, they have to pay a fee. It starts at $5,000 per person. And there are words now that it's actually increased to actually double that. And that, of course, is a problem. That's an issue that...
It's war profiteering.
It is. And back to your question, what can Canadian government do? I think the Canadian government should have immediate discussions with the Egyptians with respect to that fee, and finding ways to facilitate that, especially for the ones that we want to bring to Canada.
Yes.
I don't see any activism or any work done in this area from the side of the Canadian government. We've spoken to them, we've informed them of the issues, but we haven't yet heard any discussions, bilateral discussions, or any focus or interest in that discussion. So that needs to increase. I think the government needs to have those direct discussions on the highest level. There's no justification for that fee. And then, of course, facilitation with the processing of the visas. And the problem is that in order to process your visa to Canada, you have to first cross into Egypt.
You do, yeah.
Then you go through processing.
It's very, very difficult. It's Kafkaesque in many ways. You don't know whether you're coming or going. It's very, very, very difficult and very Byzantine. They have a biometric requirement.
Yes.
How can you do it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so it's impossible. And they've waived some of it, but you still have to do it once you arrive. So the red tape is there. That's 1,000. How many Ukrainians have come in? Well over 100,000 or more. And
how fast?
Yeah, and how fast, and with full aid packages when they came in, and that's great. That's wonderful, and our Ukrainian brothers and sisters are going through a very tough time, and it's again. You look at scale, you look at devastation, you look at war. The world is in a mess. And it's an unholy mess in a lot of ways, but it takes many hands to alleviate. But getting these people in and giving them a fair shake, it's required. It's not an impossible ask. It's something that can be affected. So this is one of the things that we should really work on. And again, Canadians and viewers like you. You can call your MP, you can call your MLA, you can call your councillor. You can let people know, look, this is not right. This is out of order. And so if we can affect the political opinion in that way en masse, this is where it comes to the fore.
Well, sorry.
I find it unfortunate that we have to, when we talk about with the war on Gaza, we always had to bring up Ukraine. And I find that very unfortunate because there should be no comparison. Activism should not be selective. No. Humanity should not be selective. Yes. And I feel that the world will always have that imprint, that mark of October 7, where what we thought we knew before October 7 and what we actually know now. Yes. And one of the big myths that a lot of people now understand and say, there is no international law, and if there is, it's not applied equally. Correct. And there's no human rights, and if there is, it's not applied to all humans. So we always have to bring up Ukraine as to say, we're just as equal, we're also human, please help us too. And I will never forget the reporter that was reporting once on Ukraine when she said, those are not your average refugees, they're not Syrian, these are white people with blue eyes. Yes. I will never ever forget what that reporter said. And even if she said it with the purest intentions, I think that's exactly how the Western world, white people see it. They're privileged, they're better. It's like they're tiers to humanity, and we're just on the bottom of it. And I find it really unfortunate to bring up Ukraine every time we're trying to cry for help, or sorry to use the word cry, but we're trying to scream for help and say, we're just treat us as equally as Ukraine, or maybe give us half of what you gave to Ukraine. Why? Why do we have to do that?
Well, I think that voice is being heard. The voice is being heard. It's being heard all around the world. And, we all have a responsibility to bear. So as human beings, we have that responsibility. So, it's been a great conversation, guys. I really appreciate it. And there'll be more to come. I would really like to continue this conversation in other forums and in other periods. We're going to have a lot of topics that we'll be discussing. And but the work goes on, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and there's so many other people from all over, from all walks of life. So thank you, and we look forward to carrying it.
Thank you for having us, Haroon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.